Hey, Laura J. and Ryan Escobar here together working on my website. He has revamped ljeh.ca, so super grateful for everything that you have done for me and for us over the years that we have worked together, and went through a lot on many different levels. And ultimately, it's all led us back to the foundation, which is the soulful nature of our connection. Because
kind of like the core of it, yeah.
As friends at the soul level,
exactly, yeah.
We have been through opportunities to abandon each other and not done it.
Several times, yeah. Yeah, it could have been easy just to be like, okay, yeah, well, whatever. It's happened several times where that's the case and you just move on. But this felt like too valuable or too special to kind of just be like, or to just throw it out, I guess. Yeah.
Because we're people.
Well, yeah.
They each bring value to a relationship. And ultimately, whether you're sleeping together, platonic, are simply an ally or an enemy, it's like, know your enemies, keep them close. For a lot of people. And so there's so much manipulation and deception that's ever present in the culture that we call home. The comfort zone of the known zone that we think we know ourselves to be, when the truth is reality is realistic evidence appearing legit in tomorrow's yesterday.
Indeed.
I came up with that acronym walking through the streets of Paris, Ontario, where I was living in the condo where you and I had connected when I was living on my own, and I had envisioned that apartment, that condo, in my mind's eye at the Turning Point retreat with Paul Martinelli and Roddy Galbraith, where I literally saw this apartment in my mind's eye, or this condo, when I was asked to envision myself doing what I wanted to do next, which I was trying to envision myself speaking on stages all over the world, and it's just like, instead my mind showed me this apartment. So then it was like, oh shit, I guess I gotta move out. And so before I even got home, I looked online, and I knew I wanted to be close to my gym, because I loved Mobody and being a member, and then I ended up working there at the end of my time in Paris, and then moved into my grandparents' basement. And it's just like, each time I took it as a hit to my self-esteem account, because that's when my ego was governing my expenditures of self-esteem, which are power investments. And it's like, as we go through life, we lose fragments of our soul because we give our power to something or someone that doesn't deserve the attention that we give them.
I think that's the case for toxic relationships, right? And sometimes it is up to you to discern really whether something is for your highest good or if it's toxic, right? And so, for example, in the case with Laura, it's always felt like we always grow so much. We do things that we're interested in, like being together is super easy.
I brought him the CIA Gateway report to read tonight, which everyone should have a look at. And it's just like, if we don't know who we are and the patterns that we're playing out, we're going to fall into either a functional or dysfunctional creative experience.
Indeed, yeah.
And dysfunctional creative experiences feel very much like they're fulfilling the basic needs of certainty and variety, significance, and love and connection.
Absolutely.
But they're not necessarily adding growth and contribution back to make it a cyclical experience of benefit.
Exactly. Yeah.
So too many people are dialed into WIIFM, which is what's in it for me, at the expense of we. And that's the problem with the Me Too movement. No offense to anyone that's super attached to being a victim. It's just, unfortunately, the culture that we've been sold, and it's offensive to actually state the obvious because it's covered by the lies that make it oblivious, or us oblivious to the truth, until the truth smacks us in the face, and then we laugh at it because it's like, oh, that's interesting.
Indeed.
We're so uncomfortable with truth that when it comes right in our face, we deny it, which is didn't even know I am lying. Denial.
Wait. Isn't no okay?
Yeah.
It's funny though, it works.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's the KNOW of to know with your senses compared to the NO of just yes or no, which are the two ways we receive truth as binary options, either one or the other. We live in an either-or world, which is the inverse of truth, which is a both reality. If we are willing to get ourselves into the magic of the moment and the flow and actually taking ourselves out of these square peg holes when we are round ones that had to shave down edges of our own selves and to flatten ourselves down and compress and repress and depress ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we become so unlike our natural nature that then we end up thinking we need to be something other than we always were in the first place, which is the point.
Indeed, yeah.
The turning point in our lives when we think we're going for one thing, but in truth we're actually needing to just focus on the basics of actually being human and growing through the everyday.
Absolutely.
That was what Paris and Turning Point taught me, which then, when I worked at the gym after leaving said apartment, where I gave up on my ability to do what I felt called to do because I knew that I didn't have access to the teachers or the tools yet. Truth wasn't in full resonance yet. I wasn't able to vibe high consistently as often because of my own emotional explosions of helium balloons that previously I had suppressed, and then suddenly I took my hands off and let go, and it's just like eruptions took place all over, and unfortunately certain individuals in my life got the brunt of my emotional exertions.
Happens.
It does. But it's shitty. And if we don't know how to manage ourselves, and if we don't realize that with all of the healing work that we actually do as individuals, we are doing for 7 generations forward and back too. We are doing multi-generational clearing with all of the inner work that we do for ourselves, which means that if we shift our attention from WIIFM to WIIFW, then we're actually able to flip the M upside down and drop the walls so that then the legs just become opportunities to overlap and interconnect with fellow bridges of light, beacons, who are able to shine light in the darkness to give hope to the ones that are trapped in that area and looking for hope, of which we, the beacons, then become as light bearers of the White Army, the defenders, the White Walkers. I don't know if the White Walkers is a correct portrayal of what.
I don't think so. But
I don't think so either, because that's the opposite. But what if in this inverted reality,
your version makes more sense, I guess. Yeah.
What they're actually talking about are the zombies actually turning human again, which means inserting our emotional genes back into alignment, activating that DNA. Because there are certain V's that are being created by the Gates and Melinda Foundation that you can't even talk about, or else you get taken off because it competes with a pharmaceutical interest. And what is a pharmaceutical but pharmacia, which pharmacia is actually dark magic, and it's the occult, and it's the combination of alchemy for negative purpose, which is where then we put violent into the violet flame, of which is actually designed to be good. It's just then when evil is added into it, it takes the D of good, making itself look like it is, when in fact it's the devil lived. Evil masquerades as truth and pretends to be a joke when they've been telling us what they've been doing the whole time. Because black magic only actually works if they let us know what they're actually doing. That's the insanity of it. Insanity, therefore, actually being repeating our previous results again and again, expecting different results. We repeat the same patterns, the same behaviors, and then expect different results, but it doesn't work that way. We have to be willing to say, hey, okay, so that was what we did before, and now we want a different result. Therefore, we need to do something different than we did before in order to get something new. And the difference that we're suggesting, I say at 11:55, is that we actually remember that we are the ones that we've been waiting for. We were the souls that chose to incarnate at this particular time in humanity's history, understanding that humanity has an extra E, which is energy, and also converts the humanity into the hue of manity, the color of all creeds, skins, races, dogmas, all of it. If we actually understand that together we can be stronger, we can put together the best and put it straight on the table, and then together we can actually refine all of it in order to find peace, truth, love, justice, freedom, which is our divine birthright. And if the democratic party actually get in, then we're going to be in major trouble. And yet we also have to understand that these families that run the government that we see are the shadow government that control the world. And as Bishop Larry Gator shares in Antarctica, the cells of the fallen angels, he actually breaks down the 4 books of Enoch, which was the grandfather of Noah, who was actually experiencing the flood of Atlantis, one of the great cities of ancient civilization that ascended and transmuted. And it was because they misused the violet flame of creation, of transmutation, of alchemy. They flipped their experience, and instead of doing it for innocence and expansion, they started doing it just for pleasure and animalistic needs at the expense of their divine nature.
What?
Anything to add?
To which part? To the Enoch part?
Sure, yeah.
Well, no, not really.
You're amazing. Okay, so that's just storytelling for you. Were you right there with me at least?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I felt that.
I kind of got lost in it, so that's why I was like, caught a little off guard.
You expect me to be creative? You just lulled me to sleep. I understand. Okay, so I wanted to read to you. Wow. Okay. So it's time to match chaos with peace. Fear is going to kill people faster than a virus attacking them. I'm sitting here with friends telling a story about a friend bleeding blood after an accident, but afraid to go to the hospital because of a virus a healthy immune system could defeat. We have surrendered ours just as we have our rights and liberties as a human being. Another story of a man too afraid to visit the hospital despite a numbed arm and purpling nose who died at home afraid to seek help. I think that reflects the underlying culture of terror that we've been raised with to believe it's normal. Wearing masks right now is not actually about the vulnerable ones at all, because if it were real help would be offered instead of the guise of it. Protect yourself at the expense of your immune system for the sake of the vulnerable ones that need double masking for a mosquito that is trying to be kept out by a fence. It doesn't fucking work, guys. Language, pay attention to the power of it. Michael Seegers and I are going to be doing a video series about the use of the power of the spoken word, and it's part of an introduction to the teachings of the Ascended Masters, the Shambhala Temple of Light, the I Am Presence, Christ consciousness. We're also going to talk about spiritual warfare and the nature of evil through the sacred sojourn of the soul. All of this is coming. And this is the brainwashing that has been done over the last 100 years. When the war on humanity really began and independent people were strategically wiped out and separated, keeping us safely separate in boxes of BS that served to separate us when we came here to build Jacob's ladder together. Except it's about changing our direction of that ladder from upwards to something we can't comprehend to lay horizontally like the Earth's surface, where we all live and must realize we are it. We are the ladder. And right now, we're being separated when we need to strengthen and connect in community, now more than ever, and realize the changing times that are upon us and the importance of building community locally with strong leadership and communication skills that ensure we are able to unite in the name of our future generations. It's time for us to realize that our choices are not just impacting the ones who are here and that we're attached to, but they are impacting the ones who came from the ones that came from us, which is why we have a responsibility to take our power back by educating our children in life skills they can use presently and for the rest of their lives, and to teach them early the importance of keeping a journal with you at all times, like the habit a nun wears without needing to compare her clothes garb to others. But we must not let our inner wild be tamed. We must not let ourselves be broken or tamed like the bulls I saw along the downtown street of the stockyards in Dallas, where these beautiful beasts stood with dulled eyes, with their masters who received money for a moment of glory sat on his back for a picture. For them, it was just a trophy on their wall of heads from past defeats that are said to be victories, but to one who understands this story is synonymous to the All Lives Matter movement we must all join, so that we understand each box we accept or commit to putting our energy into requires us turn our back or turn a blind eye to the serious unspoken problem that is being brought to the surface as the players at the top are shaken up. Did you know that 8 million children go physically missing from their family of origin each year to be sold into the black market of human trafficking, and it is our unspoken cultural agreement to pretend not to see the problem that we agree to not interfere and therefore become part of the problem? Exemplifying the simultaneous personal and shared experience of playing the archetypal roles and patterns of victim, rescuer, and persecutor. I have an ex who sought therapy after externalizing his anger at me in outbursts that nearly ended our relationship early. His therapist helped him identify his inner punisher and identify where he punished others in the name of stealing power the way he'd seen his parents in their relationship, and with him who had been abused and had feces smeared on him because he'd stayed outdoors playing football for too long in the neighborhood, in the name of becoming a great player. He was so committed he was able to override physical needs and continue playing despite needing to release. Before more uptake of energy as possible, we must make space, room for breath, to breathe deep and full, and to remember how important our breath is to being fully present and centered in possibility instead of following the rules. For someone who was able to start working on the front lines at the beginning of the pandemic, I got to be part of the whole retraining process and was able to see my experience in the mental health system September, October 2019 ahead of time. Then externally, right when it all really kicked off and I felt the energetic ripple effect. I ride waves, and as Paul Martinelli often says, a rising tide lifts all boats, and knowing him has certainly lifted my boat in innumerable ways. I have learned and grown from knowing him since 2011, and it is literally by staying abreast of what other leaders are doing that we continue to sharpen ourselves in our commitment to making room for possibility to unfold, which is what healing is. And that is also directly connected to the 5G technology that is being erected all around us and which has already been plastered in the air above us, far beyond what we can actually see with our eyes, but which we can all visit with the power of astral traveling and lucid dreaming, which is like having a physical experience while in deep sleep, which is so important to the healing process and which must not be interrupted. We must protect our sleep on all levels and become peaceful inner warriors who have mastered ourselves physically, emotionally, relationally, creatively, artistically, sexually, mentally. All levels includes a wheel of life that most coaches start using when working with their clients. It's time to coach ourselves and cut out the middleman between us and the divine that is inherently within us and is only covered over with expectations, fears, illusions, and cultural programming that shapes us. Living the dream, baby, aren't we all? I was blessed to have lived in England for my mid-20s in a relationship with a man who supported me to the best of his ability while also unpeeling layers of his own skin. He was remembering things he hadn't before, and his old memories surfaced. They showed up like helium balloons that were pushed underwater and emerged triumphantly, ready to make a splash and let people know they're here. That's usually how movement shows up in a calm environment, loud and proud, and irritating to everyone just trying to look after their own. Sometimes when we're in a bad mood, and usually are, we find happy people irritating, and at work I often experienced that with people that didn't like a bubbly cashier making minimum wage and smiling proudly anyway, not letting my job title define me. And when people ask what I'm on, I explain that I'm trading my life to be there. So for my own sake and the people I'm interacting with, I'm going to give it my all because anything less would be frustrating. Choose your poison is a real thing, and people don't want to deal with the truth because it would be too shocking. So we numb ourselves with a hammer to the head. My friend just asked me what I'd do if I could go anywhere and be anything, and I said I'd be water. Understanding in that moment the significance of what I just said. I just parked myself in the park in Simcoe where I hosted the first Peace in the Park meeting to gather strangers when my own tribe was at war between people who came from the same people. I'd just given away a bunch of my grandma's clothes to relative strangers connected through the Shambhala Temple of Light at a picnic the Sunday before when my cousin called to find out where grandma's clothes were, and they were horrified when I said I'd given some to people I'd met at a gathering the weekend before and had the rest in my trunk. There was no communication between us the way things ended with my grandma and the years before, so I hadn't checked with anyone beyond my papa who didn't care. But Grandma had, and because of it she had talked to the ones in the family who also cared about those things. She didn't say anything to me about it because I didn't care so much, but they did, and I hadn't considered them in my productive cleaning day. It sounds totally insensitive, and even I'm disgusted with myself for being so insensitive, but it's a microcosm expression of the macro. As a collective, we have largely become productive robots instead of caring, compassionate, and considerate human beings, and unlike me who cares about the ones I hurt and feels for them, most people lack even that basic level of courtesy. They just don't care, which is why they can sell someone without even batting an eye. All in the name of making a buck and in the name of duty, as if a patriotic excuse to be inhumane toward one another is enough. I was incredibly grateful I had learned about spiritual warfare before that encounter, or I would have had a very different experience. Wow. My body is shaking as my cells oscillate at a level of terror that matches unbounded, unbridled excitement when contained as well. Such is the level of the power of the water within us and all around us. I really did mess up and can only do my best to undo the physical damage, but the collateral damage is already done. It felt kind of cathartic and significant that this end came right before a powerful call with a fellow alchemist and medicine woman of the moment, while in the park where a peace meeting had first been held. Wow, time to move on to where I can be for the call, my friend Phil and Brad's. Try not to use up your social capital too quickly was the recommendation I was given before I called myself into the police that fateful day, September 27th of 2019. We must forgive them, for they know not what they do. We must enter the root temple of our own selves, which is the connecting point of the earth's chakra with ours. The base, the root, our sense of belonging in the world, and understand that there is a trail story, the unceded Indian territory clause, for so long as the game justified the chase. I did not agree with this treaty. Lakota warrior Red Cloud, Pine Ridge Reservation, at 87 years, died in 1909, the Supreme Orator. In 1876, the final victory between the witch and the sailor, Marie Goody Hadlot. Sensitive yellow-haired Sam Bellamy, 50,000 men thrown out of the army with no prospects except those of their own creation. With all her heart she believed he'd come back for her to fulfill the promised future he'd made to her before taking her virginity and planting a seed in her. Ben Hornigold, Bellamy learned quickly pirate code, leaders appointed by the crew. You were great if you met their conditions, but if not, they would overthrow leaders. And that meant death for the one they overtook. The good people of Cape Cod believed the devil helped her get out 3 times before stoning her into exile, where she went to the coast to build a home to await her treasure-seeking pirate who never returned. St. Michael from Bristol, England. Thomas Davies captured 2 crewmen when they could. The Widow was built for the slave trade, headed home from dropping off cargo in England, with blood money for trading the Widow, what was a ship called the Widow, and St. Michael, the faithful steed, the chariot, that helped me the night before. I called myself into the police when the fight between the fearful and the faithful got so big on the inside of me, I fully externalized it onto the outside at the same time. I literally called so many contacts that day before I called the police on my way home. And basically, I was trying to reach the embassy to say, look, we need to have a peace summit, and I know that I'm meant to be one of the people that bring people together, and I know I can do this, and I feel like this is what I was born for. And it's just like, how do you say all of these things? And not sound absolutely crazy, but it's like that book. It's just like sometimes the crazy ones are the ones that just have enough insanity to believe in themselves when everyone else would doubt what they had to say. By Jack Kerouac, Kerouac. He said, here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. We're not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward, and while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do.
And that's the thing, too. They're, a lot of the time, it's seen as crazy in terms of what the social norm is as well, and so it might not even be that they're necessarily crazy. They might be more sane than the average person, right? It could be the opposite way around, whereas everyone else is crazy and you're the normal one, right? But yeah, I wouldn't get too caught up on, being labeled crazy by society standards.
I shared a super cute joke with one of my favorite Chinese students. His name was Mike. And so it's basically, so they really closed school tomorrow, but they used CLOTHES for the close when they meant to do CLOSED for closed and shut down the school. So they really closed school tomorrow, and then the first comment, they shut it down. Ha ha ha. And then, that sucks. And then, I was underaware of this. And then, is it because the sweater?
That's a good one.
So, that was the joke that I shared with one of my English students. And I loved him, and I felt so ashamed of myself because I pulled out, because I just got overwhelmed and just canceled on everything. And even as I was doing it, it's like that moment when you have the power to determine your destiny by saying, yes, I will do that thing that I am uncomfortable doing, but I'm going to, and I am willing to do it anyway. You know that moment?
Yep.
And you choose to push through the fear and actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I pulled out of things a lot, and so anyway, I shared that with him, and I was glad that I did, and his mom too. Yeah. So, this is Megan and Harry. Like, listen. I'm at Food Basics, getting groceries, and here, right as I'm waiting, it says that Megan and Harry are desperate for cash. Are you kidding? Really? Come on. They don't have to be hard up just to model and move forward with their lives. Let them actually have a life without it needing to be because they split with the monarch. They didn't split entirely, it's just a business. Being royalty is a business. They had to go separate. They had to quit the job in order to actually be independent. And good for them. Congratulations to both of you. Welcome to Canada if you're ever in Toronto again, or when you are. I would love to be able to connect with fellow rogue ones, who are making a difference. That was last February 22nd. Yeah. That was when I was a mad scientist. I went mad. My friend Alex. A candle loses nothing by lighting another. Don't let people pull you into their storm. Pull them into your peace. That doesn't look very peaceful, to be fair.
Well, if you've ever done an acid trip, maybe.
Fair. Did you know LSD is Lucifer, Satan, and the devil?
Whatever. Not from what I've experienced.
Yeah, I know. Not convenient. Sometimes God closes doors because it's time to move forward. He knows you won't move forward unless circumstances force you to. Trust the transition. God's got you.
That's right.
Your future self is watching you right now through your memories. So, what are you going to craft? What legacy are you going to leave for your future self to tell tales about? What kind of opportunities are you going to open the door for so that you can say, yeah, I did that. I jumped out of a plane at 15,000 feet. Mm-hmm. Like a perfectly good plane. I jumped out of it. Why? Just for an adrenaline rush? It's like we live in this victim culture that like needs extreme to be impressive. When what if maybe like we just actually focused on basics and got back to the basics and then actually kind of could build from there. I think it's a great
fear to overcome.
Yeah.
Jumping out of like a great height and trusting you'll be okay. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's a good self-trust exercise.
Well, I had a tandem instructor, so Wayne was great. He totally great. He guided us down. It was perfect. I nearly crapped myself when you pulled the chute for the final, like when you get to the final level where you're kind of going from free fall into then getting caught and then falling down, but like that transition is just like, oh, I thought I was gonna die. Yeah. I'm terrified. That was terrifying, but I didn't die. All was well.
Still here.
Right here, still alive.
Stronger than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And encouraging that level of strength and commitment for each of us to stand as the peaceful inner warriors and to understand that we can't just leave somebody when, they made a poor choice or a thoughtless choice. And their behaviors, their choices ultimately create consequences that we have to pay for. Like, we can't just accept that any longer. We have to actually understand our creative capacity to direct the creation of our future by determining the legacy that we want to actually have now. Realizing that we are the ones that history books will be written about, and now it is an opportunity for us to come together as all creeds and colors and say all lives matter, and that if we choose just one, then it's going to create separation in between us that keep us focused on ours instead of ours. We have to understand that we can't just look at ourselves as individual, look after me and mine's in this world, or we're going to find ourselves isolated in a world that requires us come together and to be able to say, look, we're the ones that are spraying the nanoparticles that actually are entering and crossing the blood-brain barrier, so we have metals in our heads, and we can say it's not going to make a difference, except for when you put aluminum foil into a microwave and you hit go, you see sparks. And the truth is that if we've been having nanoparticles falling on us in increased rates since the lockdown took place, where roads literally at the farm steamed after it had snowed and the rain come out, WTF? When does snow steam? Never. It's not just something new. It's intentional. Precipitation is a real thing, and if we actually can learn how to use the teachings of the Ascended Masters and the ones who came before us and got it right, not based on any book, dogma, or creed specifically, but based on who they became in the process of finding who they were and how they could be most useful and contribute and grow and activate and actualize themselves as the ones that they came here to be, on mission as each of us are. Each of our souls chose to be here at this particular time, regardless of how hard it may be, and it will get harder before it gets easier. We have to be willing to brace ourselves. We have to be willing to connect with other loyal ones who are committed to the light, and being an advocate for truth. Because if we can advocate for truth, love, and justice, if we can actually be willing to take a stand and then to be willing to hold space while someone else does, there is safety in numbers. There is not safety in isolation. Keeping ourselves safely separate so that others turn their back on us because of their level of frustration at our fear ultimately takes the faith out of us, and we need faith to remain hopeful, which is the elevator on our emotions, that if we can learn how to maneuver, we can understand that it is a very different experience between the basement and the penthouse. And if we can actually look at ourselves as sovereign beings over a kingdom that has all 22 levels of emotion that Esther Hicks writes of, which is the consciousness she channels Abraham's definition of the emotional guidance scale, or system, whatever you want to call it. Understanding that systems are designed to save yourself significant time, energy, money, and more. Systems, and more. And more. And more. Pronunciation, spelling. Understand that words are spells. And spells are ultimately connected to dark magic, black magic, the occult, We have to understand that it's written right there in front of us in plain text. We just haven't been trained how to read that plain text. And now we have opportunities to be influenced and exposed to these levels of depth and truth through ones that have dedicated themselves to finding answers down rabbit holes that few would dare to venture into, and we have devoted ourselves to specific ones. So,
Word.
Indeed, the power of the spoken word will be the first part of the 5-part 7-part series that Michael and I actually record, with teachings that will serve you on your path. And then I'll have others too. And I just can't even wait, because this is what I've been working on for as long as we've known each other. This has been the goal. I just didn't know how to do it specifically. And now it's like the people have presented themselves, because now is go time. We don't have time to mess around anymore. We have to understand that messiahs are the ones who have grounded the mess I am. Humble pie. Learn to like it. You're going to need to be able to digest the shit as you clear out what has been pushed down your throat. For so long you thought that that was yours. And then when you realize that actually that was someone else's, it was an entity of its own accord, like the black mamba, which was of the highest order in training and gamemanship, understanding the tactics for manipulation. Serious, guys. If we understand that we're at a crux in the road, the choice which direction we will go into, we must understand that the medicine wheel has us enter at a specific space and then turn in each direction to pay honor to each aspect of creation. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Mother. We have to be willing to actually ground the child with a mother and father, which is why Mother Earth and Father Sun are always there to shine on us as the sun, the one who came here as a God spark incarnate inside of the vessel, which is our body, and therefore we must become peaceful inner warriors who are willing to tend to our body, mind, spirit, heart, all of it. Every part. We have to be willing to actually start honoring who and whose we truly are. And that is what this series is all about. So we look forward to coming to you again soon in the Peaceful Inner Warriors United podcast. And I wanted and am grateful for the opportunity to share this time with a fellow Peaceful Inner Warrior who has helped me and supported me with my technological requirements online, and someone who learned how to do it on your own in many ways, and also had formal training in Montreal. And you've done a lot to be able to do what you do and have an energetic signature that's aligned with mine and where I'm going, because as energetic practitioners, we have to be very mindful about people's energetic thumbprint on our business, on all of what we do. Like when police officers come up behind you and they touch your tail light, that's not by accident. That's because if anything happens to them and their fingerprint is on your tail light, then they can incorporate you and them into the search. It's for their own safety. They do some of these things that they do. But if we don't know what they're doing when they're doing it, then we aren't able to understand what's going on. And we need to be able to do so now as much as ever when abusive parents are at the helm. And we need to be able to govern the inner kingdom of our own being.
Now more than ever.
Now more than ever, absolutely. So there's some exciting things that are coming down the tubes, and I am so grateful. Amazing, a message coming in, which is what we would love to have in each of you contributing to the tipping point in collective consciousness by sharing this message with someone who needs to know they are not alone, that they matter, and that we are in this together, and it is time for us to learn our rights in order to unify and come together in the name of love, light, and freedom, and to understand that we are at a time in diverging timelines where we are the ones that must learn to summon the archangels and the beings of a higher capacity connected to the I Am presence that is above the Christos consciousness, that I have been connecting with experts that have specialized in uncovering the meaning and significance behind some of these things, and then being able to get truths that then you can feel because they've done more than just read one space. They've read many other things on said spaces and actually came to conclusion based on alternative languages and going back with the roots of etymology, which is the study of words and letters and combinations and patterns, and understanding how significant everything is, including what we do with our time, energy, effort, attention, and money. I have some for you, by the way. So we'll look after that right after this, because it's important to reward people for what they do for us. And we must also understand that wealth does not only come in the form of money. Sometimes it comes in the form of experiences. Like we went to see Matt Kahn together.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, right? It was super cool. And we went out to Las Vegas together into the
awesome
Grand Canyon on a mule ride into the vagina of the world.
Yeah.
That was awesome. And then stayed in Mesquite for 5 days because you left your passport by accident. But then we ended up having an incredible opportunity to explore Mesquite, and it cost $68, I believe it was, each, or $66. Mm-hmm. I can't remember specifically.
Didn't we get a picture with that guy we saw too? Because of that. Was that there? I don't even remember. Where did we get that picture?
Which one?
The one with Scott.
Oh yeah, that was. They came and saw us after the conference. Okay. Yeah. So
that was cool.
Yeah, lots has happened because we stuck around and we didn't bail. And that is the significance of relationships of significance rather than just surface. We want things of substance. We need to get over our need for instant gratification and temporary fixes. We actually need to get back to substance and understanding that we can have substance with many people, but we need to be very careful that we're not sharing our energetic being with anyone that doesn't prioritize or value us, because we cannot prioritize someone who doesn't prioritize us. If somebody doesn't care about us as much as we care about them, we're going to hurt and have heartbreak because ultimately they don't have capacity to give us what we want. And then we have to actually understand what it is we actually want. Because when we understand what we actually want and why we actually want what we want, then we often find that we actually want something different. It was just the most immediate way to achieve gratification that we considered first. But when we actually stuck it out and waited and just said, okay, whatever it takes, and we stuck it out with those people, then we developed a level of trust and respect that comes with us as we work on bigger projects and what we really came here for. Because as much as we thought it was about entrepreneurship, ultimately, it's about coming together as the ones that we've been waiting for. 50-50. What are you going to choose? It's all about which wolf you feed. Which wolf are you willing to feed and give your attention to? Will it be faith or will it be fear? That is the question. Romeo and Juliet. Don't drink the poison because you think someone else did. Find the elixir within your own self, the Bindu chakra, adrenochrome, where we have oxidized excretions of hormones from the pineal gland, which is the same that regulates our circadian rhythm, which is ultimately why you don't let anyone put a laser against your forehead ever, because it messes with our ability to understand when's day and night. If they're getting lasered, it gets completely thrown off, and then it takes time to readjust. And if we keep on throwing ourselves off, then it just takes longer to readjust and readjust and readjust and readjust. But at the end of the day, a missile is off course 99% of the time. But they're constantly readjusting, recorrecting, and they're not judging themselves. They're just continuing to go for what it is they know they're after. Set your eyes on the prize, and then go for it. But also understand that you pay a karmic price for everything, because it's all coming back at us. Life is a bitch is a common saying, simply because we put God in a box and turned him into a dog, and what happens when the dog gets backed into a corner? The bitch bites. We have become a society of bitches, which is actually reducing us to the state of animals. We can't afford that anymore. So let's change it, guys, by actually taking responsibility for our actions, because with power comes responsibility, and we have to be willing to wield it wisely. We have to be willing to be the ones that we've been waiting for. So, I want some coffee, which I understand is something that at some point I'm going to need to give up.
Eventually, yeah. I mean, not that bad. Moderation, balance are key.
Yeah, but when we actually understand what's in everything, then it's just like, okay, we really got to get to our basics.
Like a well-sourced coffee is all you need to get. You know? So it feels good. That's something that you feel good about drinking, right? I think that'll help.
Lord, I yawn when I process a lot of information, and it's been on for quite some time. So thank you for being here for the second episode of the Peaceful Inner Warriors United podcast, with your host, Laura J.E. Hamilton, and my friend and trusted web guy, Brian Escobar of B1 Creations, who I would highly recommend for conscious creators looking for someone that really is intuitive in his approach to helping you get what you want, even when you feel like you're lacking clarity. And he does it without nickeling and diming you and trying to, go for the very top dollar, because he understands the value of relationships, and he also values himself. So he wants to work with people that are aligned, and that means having integrity. So if you are someone like that, then it is time for us to connect, because there's communities of others like us that are not just in it for themselves, but are really in it for themselves and you to both win, to be able to be part of the rising tide that lifts all boats. So it's 55 minutes into the podcast of today, and that is all I have to say.
Same here.
Peace.
Peace.
Thanks so much. We look forward to seeing you next time. Please share this message with a friend who needs to know they are not alone, and that it is time to learn how to self-govern ourselves and learn to actually control and regulate our emotions without suppressing, depressing, compressing, repressing, instead releasing and having strategies to do so, along with a special practice that honors all of who we are rather than just certain aspects of it. So all of that is coming in the shows to come. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, share, comment below, and be part of the conversation. Join the movement, ride the wave. Peace out. Thank you for tuning in to the second episode of the Peaceful Inner Warriors United podcast, where you have a chance to connect with other soulful seekers who are willing to take a stand for what we believe in.